So in this video we'll look at applying patterns to the template to create the beginnings of our flat plan. Now before I start experimenting with patterns, obviously I need to make some patterns, see the previous videos, but then I also really need to consider how those patterns, how I want those patterns to behave. If you use the pattern fill element, then that technique allows you to create a brick-like facade where you can construct and vary the way that the so-called bricks come together, can form. And they are all pretty rigid. You have a really nice cross weaving. Again, it has a brick-like effect, but it is interlaced, and you can see the strawberries are all turned upside down and back to front. Random, which is my favourite, it can give you some really nice things, but sometimes you have to try it again and again and again until you actually get an image that you really want. In this case, this wouldn't really work. My strawberries upside down, the main strawberry that people would look at. So I need to delete it and try again and again. Spiral, again, you can introduce, and in all of these, these final ones, spiral and symmetry, you can introduce spacing so that you can have pockets of colour coming through, and you can put in a background colour or texture. And of course you have ring spacing in spiraling, as well as spacing between the actual strawberries. All of them, with the exception of symmetry, have got colour randomness built into them, and you can also add in brightness randomness, which will give you much more variation with the darker tones especially. When you're actually doing it, you're gonna get, let's just edit, fill, just to remind you. If you do it at school, at college, you need to remember that when you try and run the script, so when I say OK, I tick the script to apply it, and then say OK to apply it. In order to get the preview, I have to dump the user file. So remember, you have to go onto your desktop, to go computer, and then I don't have it, but you will have a user folder, and you just simply need to delete that user folder, just eject it. There's a little eject button beside it, and then you'll get a preview. At the moment, this one is in symmetry. All of them bar symmetry, I think, have density. In this case, you have pattern scale. So, I mean, it's just a fabulous, wonderful tool that you can spend a long time exploring the possible variations. I said I'd left the colour variation out because really with this one, I probably wanted to give it a bit more of the feeling of a symmetrical pattern. The minute you introduce colour randomness into it, you start to lose that. But you've also got brightness, which you can see pushes into the darks mainly. Okay. So I'm going to just cancel that one, and we'll just go into one more. My favourite is random. With random, what will happen is if you're not careful, you get lots and lots and lots of spaces that you might not want. That's fine if you do. It's probably to do with the density. So the density down here will give you a few scattered strawberries. And then as I add up to 10, it pulls the strawberries together. But you can still get holes. Let's see what that one does. You can still, there's a big one there. And that's just because, let's just go into it. Okay. You've also got scaling factors, and they're all pushing each other around. If you play with those, sometimes I find if you bring them together, you often get a much more conforming scenario. Now, Any one of these might work really well for the background pattern for my chocolate bar. And of course they're available to me in any Photoshop document now. They sit in the library. But what I do need to do is I need to construct something to hang them on to. I could just put them over the top of this. I could just draw a shape and put it over the top. The way I like to do it is just simply to create a fresh layer. I could draw around with the pen tool and make a selection, but it's just as easy. Take the magic wand tool, select all the yellows, and then up to the rectangle tool and make sure you're in add in, and that will allow me to add in all of the other elements that I want to exclude. Otherwise I'm going to be punching holes into my pattern. It's left this area untouched, which is fine actually, because we don't really want a pattern on that area. That's the area where they may choose to put an expiry date or a code number for the batch numbers. I've put one here, but it's more than likely to go over here. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to that fresh layer. I'm just actually going to fill that with a colour. Edit, fill. And instead of patterns, we're going to go to colour and choose a suitable colour for the background for my strawberries. So I'm going to choose a nice pink. See how that works out. You can always change it later. And that's just ready for me to hang on the pattern. Now, I could just fill that with the pattern, but then it's all on the same layer. I like to keep things separate, so I'm going to put it on a separate layer. And again, once again, I could just fill this with the selection, but then that limits the placing of the pattern. So what do I mean by that? Well, if I now deselect, so select, deselect, and I'm just going to fill the whole document with that pattern. So now I'm going to choose pattern, random fill. Oops. Now that's happened because I forgot to turn the script on. So it just ended up filling in traditional wallpaper format, sort of door-to-door patterns. Now, switched it back on again. I get my little preview here. I'm going to change the scaling a little bit, bring it down a bit. Okay. Not so keen on that. I'm going to just do it a couple of times. I'm just going to delete what I've done and do it a few times until I'm... So I've made up a pattern with smaller strawberries and more variation, and I'm still not happy. There's too many spaces. I really want it to be almost covered. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep going back in. I'm in the same layer, but I'm going to keep going back into fill and applying it again. So if I do it another time, it'll add an additional layer of strawberries on top. And further to that, if I edit fill, I can also add in a mode of blending if I wanted to. It's probably going to muck this up, but we'll try it anyway. So we'll go edit multiply, and we'll add in another layer on top. Yeah, it sort of destroyed the feeling of strawberryness now. But you can see you could add in blending modes, and you might want to experiment with that. So I'm going to go with this, and what I need to do is I need to make sure it's this shaped. So I'm going to clip this layer to this layer, and the easiest way to do it is to right click on your mouse, create clipping mask. If you haven't got a right click mouse, you can use the flyout menu and say create clipping mask. So I don't need to select anything, I just need to be on the layer, and it will attach itself to the layer below. You can see it's got a little inverted arrow. The benefit of that is I've still got control over where that pattern actually lies. So I can move the pattern around, and I could even, let's say I wanted to scale it down a bit. and get more strawberries in there. Just scale it up a little bit. Just make sure you're not cutting anything off. And there you go. I'm happy with that. Your job for next week is to add in the logo and all the information. I'm not going to go through that again with you. You know how to do that in Illustrator. Except for the purposes of this exercise, you can use stuff you source from the web. So if you want to, you can do a search for ingredients on packaging, something like that, and anything else that you need. Images search, and you'll just get loads and loads of these. If you look for nutrition on packaging, you'll get lots of imagery that you can borrow. Remember to take the larger images. If I'm going to use that, don't use the thumbnail, use the larger image, or even go into the site and bring that in. Complete your package, ready for the change into 3D, and for us to apply the foil as well to make it look beautiful. So next week we'll finish the packaging off and attempt to mock up a sort of 3D image for your design board.